All right, all right, all right. Welcome to Pan-African Perspectives, where we dive into the real life experiences of visiting Africa, moving to the continent, investing in African ventures, and buying land on the continent of Africa. All with the ultimate goal of advancing Africa and restoring its rightful place on the world stage. Our mission is to support an independent Africa and empower African people on the continent or in the diaspora. Whether you're currently in Africa, you've recently migrated, or your ancestors were trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade, or if you're a foundational Black American, this live stream is for you. I'm Joe Hatagwa, your host and the founder of Authentic African. Each week, I'll share my experiences living, traveling, and investing in Africa. And from time to time, such as today, I will also be sharing the stories of others who've made the move to the continent, whether they started on the continent and stopped in the diaspora, but they are now living on the continent. So today we have a special guest. His name is Adetokumboh M'Cormack. We've had him on before, my cousin, and the writer, director, producer, and star of The German King, a series about the story of Rudolf Manga Bell, who was the liberator of Cameroon. The story is incredible. You guys might have heard us talk about this before, but without further ado, I am just going to bring on our guest, M'Cormack. What's
Hi,
up?
Joe. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you. We've had two conversations previously, and we had another conversation many moons ago when we
Yeah.
talked about the beginning of this story with the short film, The German King.
Mhm.
I think we can probably do is start with that, and then we'll go into your background because I do want to give folks an understanding of basically where you come from and how you got to this point. But can we, just so we don't bury the lead, can we just quickly talk about The German King and what your role is with it and what you're doing? And then we'll get to your background and to your story.
Yeah. So basically, I've been an actor for, as you know, almost 30 years professionally. And I think as an actor and many other friends of mine who are in the entertainment industry just got really frustrated with a lot of the roles that we tend to play. A lot of stereotypical, gangster, slave, and, which is, yes, being a slave is part of our history, our shared history, as Africans and African Americans. But there's so much more to who we are, so much more that makes up being an African, our culture, our heritage. And I decided, hey, let me take matters into my own hands and let me see if I can create content that, will portray us in a different way, in a more dignified, proud, robust way. And also something which will basically teach people that there's more to our story than the typical narrative. And so I did this, I Google searched African heroes, and Rudolf Manga Bell was the first person that came up. And I was like, how is it that I have never heard of this extraordinary man? He was a Cameroonian-born prince raised in Germany alongside Wilhelm II. And then he ended up becoming king and coming back and fighting against German imperialism because he saw that his people were being oppressed and subjugated under tyrannical colonial rule. And I found his story to be so fascinating because I had never seen, other than, perhaps Patrice Lumumba or Shaka Zulu. I had never seen another African hero, and especially these things were not taught in our schools or in history classes and whatnot. And I was so blown away by his story. I was so inspired that there was this man who stood up for just the right thing. He figured, yes, I'm one man, but I have one voice that can make a difference. And it was such an inspiring story. And I turned that into a short film. And Joe, as you know, I called you and I was like, do you want to come on board as a producer? And Joe said yes. And so we produced the short film. It did extremely well. I starred in it, I wrote it, I directed it. And it went to Cannes, won a bunch of awards, qualified for the Oscars, did extremely well on the festival circuit. And then Angel Studios sat down with me and we had a conversation, and they were like, "What are your plans for this series, for this film long term?" And I said, "I want to turn this into a movie. I want to turn this into our Braveheart moment. We have, you look at all these different cultures and different. You have stories about, William Wallace, and you have stories about." All these European kings and queens and heroes, but we seldom see movies for the masses about our own. Of course, the heroes that we look at, once again, you have Kunta Kinte, which, and I think Roots, amazing, amazing story. But we had so many other people who are masters of our destiny, who are agents of change, who were absolutely heroic, and who ultimately were kings and queens. And these are the stories that I thought we need to share. And also for us, for as Africans, Africans in the diaspora, African Americans, to say, wait a minute, these people could be my heroes as well, and people that we could potentially emulate.
Well said. And I'll just have to say, when I got that call, I was like, who? And then you explained to me the story. Oh, wow. I had no idea who this person was and what he did. His story is incredible. And the short film was incredibly well done. And me having all the behind the scenes knowledge of what it took to film it, having to film it all in the States, and
yes,
and using I guess it was like a museum that ended up becoming the castle, right?
Yes, it became the palace for Wilhelm II, as well as the African palace, as well as other things. I mean, we shot it in Ohio of all places, and everyone's like, right. that was in Africa. I was like, nope, it was Ohio. Thanks, Ohio. Shout out.
Shout out to Ohio. So I didn't even know they had that museum there. But I thought it really, and you did a great job with with obviously the limited resources, being in the States and shooting on a Indiegogo budget, right? I mean,
yes.
crowdfunded, yeah. Right? We raised the money. It was a crowdfunded.
Yes.
It was crowdfunded. Short amount of time, right? And we hit the crowdfunding goal. You got some other outside investors from people that you knew, who were from the world of Hollywood. Which I thought was great, and I got a chance to go to a couple of those short film festivals or the film festivals. Yeah. That was really
premieres, the red carpet, talk to the press, all that good stuff.
Talking to the press and walking on the red carpets, watching it, seeing other people. I think the important piece of it to me was seeing how other filmmakers responded to the short film. Folks with $500,000 budgets, over $1 million budgets for the films that they produced, thinking that you had that same budget after watching it.
And I was like, I ain't got that money. I wish we did. I mean, we did this on a shoestring budget. And when I say shoestring, we had to have, crowns, thrones, kingdoms, castles. And it was literally an Indiegogo budget. And me really thinking, how can I make X amount of money go as far as it did? And thankfully, you had to really think outside the box. Otherwise, this would not have been able to get done.
Yes, and you did an incredible job. As you said, you made the festival circuit, won countless awards. Is it over 30 at this point? I know it's over 25.
But over 30 and counting, yes. I think, gosh, I lost count. But yeah, over 30 awards, Best of Fest. Best actor, best production design, best producers, all of that. I mean, it was just the feedback we got was incredible, and also what stuck with me a while ago was when I think it was in Ohio once again, and we were doing a screening, and this 10-year-old white kid comes up to me, and he was like, "Your film was my favorite," and I was like, well, that's interesting because I didn't, for me, it was more about inspiring a 10-year-old version of me, someone who could say, oh, I could have someone who looks like me and, who could be my hero. But to see that this story connected with so many people, it didn't matter who they were, what their background was, it was like this universal story of, standing up against injustice, doing the right thing no matter what, making the ultimate sacrifice so that your other people can live, your people can live. It was just something that resonated with so many people, and I'm so thankful for that.
Awesome. Now, there was a question of where it was shot. What part of Ohio? Do you remember where?
We were in, goodness, it's not too far away from Cincinnati, if I remember correctly. Yes.
So suburb outside.
Sorry, it's been a minute. Yeah, it was close to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So of course, that's the short film. I do want to take it back a little bit because obviously the title of this is from LA to Nairobi, and your story, you've lived many lives, many stories, right? We hung out for the first time when you were on press. You were doing a press tour for the film that you did when you were 12 years old?
Yes,
in the 90s,
yes,
right?
Yes, gosh.
So I was about 10 years old. I think I was about
Yeah.
10.
Don't give
You were
away my
12.
age,
And
Joe.
you had, well, you know, we're close to the same age, man. I tell
You
everybody,
talk about? I'm 25. What do you mean? Yeah.
right. The math is a math thing, so day. All right, so anyway, um, so you came to the States, you're doing that
Yeah.
tour, and I thought this was really interesting that you had chosen this career path so early, like, and you were
Yeah.
actually doing it, right? It wasn't like, you know, you're not used to children doing the job they say they want to do. And so, but you
Yes.
came to the States, I guess that was that, I guess, your first time in the States coming to do that? Were
No,
you about to? Okay.
so we would come to the States and stay at your house every summer, like, well, every couple of years. And that was always the highlight of my summer, being like, I'm going to hang out with my baby cousin Joe. And, we'd have the most fun. And your mom, Auntie Joy, would make the best food and was the best hostess. But that time, yeah, I was 12 years old. I did my first movie called The Great Elephant Escape, which also starred Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the late Leo Burmester, and the late Julian Sands. And it was, yeah, my first time doing a major motion picture. But what was incredible about that project was it taught me that I, as an African man, as a black boy who who was born in Sierra Leone, grew up in Kenya, you can take this seriously. You can do this as a profession and make a living doing it. And so I remember having a very serious conversation with my father at age 12. And I was like, Daddy, because that's what we call our parents in Africa, Daddy. And being very, very worried about how he was going to respond. And I was like, Daddy, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be an actor. And my dad's only condition was, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this right. And you're going to study at conservatory. So I went to SUNY Purchase Conservatory of Theatre Arts and Film later on, and I studied acting. And I ended up becoming a professional actor and whatnot. But yeah, at 12, I was pretty sure that I knew I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah, that was impressive to me. And you obviously stuck with it all the way through. And I thought it was interesting because I thought at the time I wanted to be a doctor, but I wasn't doing anything that was going to later move me into that career path until much later. And I obviously decided not to be a doctor because here we are. But okay, so taking a step back though, because I don't think I mentioned to those who are watching this for the first time who don't know, who haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet from the previous live streams, you grew up in what cities around the continent of Africa before you moved to the United States to go to the conservatory at SUNY Purchase?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm a child of the continent and of the diaspora, I like to say. So I was born in Sierra Leone, raised mostly in Lagos, Nigeria, and in Nairobi, Kenya, and then moved to the United States to SUNY Purchase. I think at 17 or 18, and then I went to Los Angeles soon after, and then came back to the continent shortly after. Well, like 2 years ago.
Yes, and so not to just quickly breeze past your IMDb, but everybody can check that out. But you did have a bunch of credits on your IMDb profile from stuff that you've done in the States. Maybe you want to give an idea of some of the work that you've done, some of the shows you've been on and stuff like that, just stuff that people would know and recognize, so they know like what you did while in the States.
Yes. So right after I graduated, I got on a show called Lost, for those of you who remember that big mega hit back in the early 2000s. And I was in season 2 and season 3. I've also been on shows like NCIS, Blood Diamond. I booked pretty shortly after moving to Los Angeles. I was also on, currently I'm on, X-Men 97. I play M. Savanur, aka Apocalypse. So what's been amazing is getting to travel so much and also still have a career. So yes, I mean, I do live on the continent because I'm doing my new TV series, The German King. But it allows me to, I think ever since the pandemic, we suddenly realized we didn't have to be in one place. If I need to work, I get to fly back to the States and, do a movie or two but I have a studio wherever I go. I do voiceover, lots of voiceovers. So many of you will probably recognize my voice from shows like Castlevania and Blood of Zeus, and a bunch of other shows as well. So yeah, I mean, I've been very, very fortunate. I've had a wonderful career. I continue having an amazing career. But I really realized that, careers, what gives you joy, what gives you fulfillment, it's basically trying to make a difference. And so over the last couple of years, I really decided to be a little bit more picky with the kind of roles that I was doing, because I didn't like the fact that I think it was during the whole situation with BLM and George Floyd and whatnot, and realizing the impact we as filmmakers had on the way the world sees us and the way media sees us. And if we continue to show certain images or whatever, that will continue to perpetuate stereotypes. And I was like, I cannot do that. I've got to show a different view of how we are, who we are, and a humanized view. And also, and so that's pretty much why I became so passionate about doing shows like the German King series and doing other movies, and creating my production company, Loma Mansa Productions, which is all about, just changing the narrative and telling empowering stories that I think the world, not just Black people, but the world needs to see.
Agreed, 100%. And I obviously we talked about this before, but it's incredible to see your journey, how you got to this point. Because obviously, as the rest of everyone is getting introduced to you as a person who's now, working on this series. But I obviously have known you since you were a kid when we watched TV. Right.
There's a story which we might share. I don't know.
Another time.
Another time.
Stephen King's It, though, was a scary movie, as you all remember it. It was a phenomenon in the 90s on television. They did do a remake later on, obviously more recently. But we watched that on TV. It was a primetime event while you were in the States doing press for the Great Elephant Escape way back then. And so to see you kind of come to this moment, it's really been great to see. And so, okay, so we got to how you got to your career in LA, some of the credits that you've gotten. We did breeze past that quickly. Just to be clear, you did say you're doing the voice of Apocalypse on X-97. So yes. I don't know how many people here are into that kind of stuff, but obviously I watch these cartoons. I watched the original X-Men 92 to 96. And X-Men 97 is the series on Disney Plus and Hulu. Well, I guess it's on Disney Plus, which is the new X-Men cartoon that they've kind of picked up where they left off in the original series that kind of gave birth to all the movies that you guys might have seen in theaters. So just that context, I think, is important, because Apocalypse is the big bad. If you've seen the movie versions, it was the big bad in the first movies with Thanos. On the cartoon version, the big bad was Apocalypse, and he's the voice of Apocalypse. So there you go.
And Sabanur, who becomes right, and there's also only so much I can say, because Disney. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fine. And so to go back to the move to the continent. So obviously you lived on the continent, and you're a child of the continent and the diaspora, as you said. You got your classical training at a conservatory. You actually worked in Hollywood. You continue to do work there from the continent of Africa. You are now living full-time generally in Nairobi, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That is correct. Okay. So yes.
Yeah. How did you get there? How did you make the decision to move to the continent to film, and why Nairobi?
Okay, that's a very, very, very good question. So in addition to growing up in Kenya, a lot of people like, you went back because that's where you grew up. That is actually not true. So when you look at the TV series that we're doing, The German King, we're starting to go into production. Cameroon very much is called Africa in miniature. And the only other place really in Kenya that has sort of the infrastructure, that has, decades worth of filming and whatnot, and the equipment and the, incredible crew and cast is Kenya. And so when I looked at which countries would be the best country to film the series, Kenya was by far, out of South Africa, even Kenya and a few other places I went to, and even in Cameroon, just because the story features Rudolf Manga Bell story, which, in Cameroon is a very tropical, region. It's in Central Africa. But we also feature other characters such as, well, I don't want to give too much away, but there are other regions of Africa that we visit, and Kenya has 5 very distinct climates. You've got deserts, you've got the incredible beaches, you've got the tropical rainforest, you've got all these different things. And so it was the perfect location for what we wanted to do. So we went back, and so I divide my time actually between Kenya, Cameroon, and currently I'm in South Africa taking meetings and also talking to some potential cast and crew members that we want to bring on board. But yeah, but we'll be filming predominantly in Kenya.
Awesome, and that makes a lot of sense. I think, you know, just hearing how difficult it was for you to film everything you filmed in the time that you did in the city outside or the town outside of Cincinnati,
Yeah.
you know, and you're still in the States. I can understand why you have to be in a place that has the infrastructure to film a show that is with the production value that you're looking for out of this series, right?
100%.
Where it can be watched around the world and be seen on the same level of any of the other content that you see on any other platform, right?
Yes.
I think that that's an important element of this process, right? And so that speaks to kind of the business of filmmaking. But I want to dig in a little bit more to this trip to South Africa and that other element, right? And that's, you know, finding financing and the networking element. Because you are a
Yes.
creative, right? Writer, director,
Yes.
producer, actor.
Yes.
But now you're also an executive, right? And
Yeah.
so, what is that like for you? And what is this? What is this process like being in South Africa? Who are you talking to? What are the conversations like? What are you looking to get out of this trip to South Africa and the trips that you make like this?
Yeah, so as you guys know, Angel Studios is a crowd-funded platform. So what basically that means is all the money that we get is from the crowd. So we come to you and we say, is this a TV series or a movie or whatever that you want to see? And thankfully, when we did our testing the waters, overwhelmingly, the crowd said, we absolutely love this show. We love everything that stands for. It's a show that amplifies light. It's a show that basically checks all the boxes as far as does this fulfill our North Star message? And what Angel Studios' North Star message is this a show that shows people that are empowering? Is it a show that is true? Is it a show that inspires, compels change? And is it a show that about goodness and how, you know, good can triumph over evil? And so that's what our show basically is about. And so what ended up happening was, oh, there you are, Joe. Did I lose you or did you lose me? Can you hear me?
No, you were good. You were good.
Okay, okay.
I just
Okay, so I was like, am I talking to myself?
No, you're all good. I think
So,
everyone was still following you. I was just me that got cut off. Sorry, guys.
okay.
We're back.
So basically what ended up happening was it was the perfect connection with Angel Studios. And I was so thankful that it was like this match where we understood each other and exactly what we wanted to do and the kind of story that we wanted to tell. So we went to the crowd. We ended up doing this crowd fund, raised almost $1 million. And so thanks once again to the crowd, because you saw this and you said, this is something that we want to be a part of. And this is something that we want to see get made. And then an Angel Studios came together. And so that allowed us to, you know, basically go into pre-production and whatnot. But as a producer, you're always looking for partnerships. You're always looking for ways in which you can, because this is a show that we planned for multiple seasons. And because of that, you know, that's, and a lot of people I've now realized want to get involved in the production process. So we were called by some people who were going to be in MIP Africa, and they were like, this is such a Pan-African story. How can we get involved? And so I got on a plane with my associate, and we're here now talking to different investors, distributors, and just people who want to get involved with the making of the TV show, as well as meeting other actors and whatnot, and crew members who want to be part of this show, and seeing how we can truly make this not just a project about, you know, Cameroon, but like a truly Pan-African project. And by that, I mean, yes, we're getting people from Kenya, we're getting people from South Africa, we're getting people from Cameroon, we're also getting people from the United States. Because one thing you have to understand about that time, but I don't want to give too much away, and I talk way too much, so it's like spoilers. I've got to make sure I don't give you guys any spoilers just yet. But you cannot tell African history without telling African American history. We are so connected. And so over the course of the story, which happens during the scramble for Africa leading up to World War I, there are certain characters and certain icons from history who joined the fight against imperialism. And so we're basically in the so I mean I'm sure now you guys are like, wait a minute, who are those people? So I think that, you can start guessing. But what I've over the course of the last couple of years as I've done research and written our scripts and whatnot, to see how much support there was from our African American counterparts has been incredible. And I think what's really devastating is, being a Sierra Leonean African American, literally. But when I talk to my fellow African Americans about our relationship, them saying things like, well, you all don't like us. I'm like, that couldn't be further from the truth. We love African Americans. And I think when you, as an African, because I'm seen as, people don't really see me as African now. They're like, are you African American? I'm like, I'm a little both. I'm an African American, Sierra Leone American. So many things can be true at the same time. But it shows that we have so much more in common, and more unites us than separates us. And that's what this show is going to basically talk about. And then the other thing is, in my conversations with King Jean-Yves Mbumbu Douala Manga Bell, who was the great grandson of Rudolf Douala Manga Bell, he's been like, Ade, can we make this show a cultural bridge? So not just between Africans, but between Africans and diaspora, and tell them that they can come home and that they will always have a home here in Cameroon. And I was like, yes, Your Majesty, that will be my goal for this project. So you heard it from the king. He actually wants you all to come home. And so there's videos. Joe, we have to go to Bimbia, because I went to this place called Bimbia Slave Port. Now, as many of you know, a lot of us are Creole, which means our ancestors were taken as enslaved people. So our Sierra Leoneans have very, very similar histories and backgrounds to African Americans, and hence my last name is McCormack. And basically, I did my DNA test, and Joe, we're part Cameroonian, by the way. So more on that later. Yeah. But when I went to Bimbia and just seeing where our ancestors went and seeing the point of no return, and just imagining what it is that they felt when they're leaving this continent for the last time, but like talking to King Jean-Yves and talking to these other kings who are like, yes, all of this happened, but you can come home and see where it all began. And also educating me on the culture, the spirituality, the, quote unquote mythology. I'm so moved to my core, because suddenly, things which didn't make sense to me as a child, like, I never celebrated our mythology, I don't even want to call it mythology. I want to say what makes us African, just right. Being a part of the continent and just being so deeply connected to nature and self and the earth. That's something you find when you go back home, and something that the King Jean-Yves has basically educated me on. And he hopes that you all will get to experience as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And for those, first of all, that I just love the way you talk about everything so passionately, and you really have a clear vision for where you're going with this. And it's great to see that evolution from an idea, those whatever 5-6 years ago to like where we are
7 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 7 years ago.
Time flies.
So Leslie Jones, one of our subscribers, who's a scriptwriter, and she's working her own film and documentary and a bunch of other stuff as well. She lives in Los Angeles. And I met her in Ghana. I've interviewed her recently as well. She was asking, is this the family member that was working on The German King? So for those of you who are just joining, yes, this is the family member that is working on The German King. In fact, if those of you who are joining now, you can go back and watch the beginning where we talk through, where we are right now in the process, and where you are currently. And I guess we can kind of pick up from that point. So you're having these conversations. You are in pre-production now, if I'm not mistaken,
yes.
right?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. And so,
now. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
yes.
Tell us where you are at this point.
Yeah, so basically what that means is, and we've also done a little bit of shooting of season 1, just very minimal, and it's looking fantastic, guys. It's looking, and first of all, I just want to say, because I know a lot of the people who have been part of, who have been listening to these live streams and watching these podcasts, have been supporting this show. And I've seen a lot of you who contributed, who have shared our posts, and I just want to say thank you all very, very, very much from the bottom of my heart, because we would not be here if it wasn't for you. So thank you, Joe. And so now basically the plan is to go ahead and do production from now into the fall of next year, and then release it sometime late next year, the first season.
Nice. I know you can't really talk too much about it, obviously, so everybody's going to have to stay tuned. But for
Yeah.
you, obviously this has been a long time coming. It's gone through many different iterations, right? It was a short
Mhm.
film that ended up being a proof of concept, which got it picked
Yeah.
up, and then we have this whole system of fundraising, almost $1 million, as you mentioned. Additional
Mhm.
funding is coming in. You're talking to different folks. Um, how does it feel to be in the process of getting ready to start filming? And what can you say? Let me ask that question first, and then I have another
Yeah.
question for you.
Okay. Wait, how does it feel to be in the
Yeah,
process of?
how does it feel to finally be in the process of actually starting the filming now?
Honestly, it feels surreal, and I'll tell you what it is. I mean, I remember the other day on set, someone was like, "So it must feel great that your vision's finally coming to fruition." And I was like, "This is not about me. This has never been about me. For me, it's simply been about the future generation, and it's been about the people who have felt like they have been disenfranchised, who felt like they were not worthy, who felt like they didn't have a voice, who felt that they were not seen. It is the 10-year-old me who didn't have that hero, that positive icon that he looked up to. So for me, knowing that there's going to be a generation of people being like, oh my gosh, I could be like Rudolf Manga Bell. I could be like these characters in this series. That's what gives me so much joy and hope for a brighter Africa and a better tomorrow. So that's how I feel.
Awesome. And you hinted at some things, just in terms of his story, because obviously there are so many inspiring elements to it. From the short film, I'll talk about the short film, and then you decide what you want to talk about, right?
Yep.
So, because I know the show is in production right now, but just what I learned about his story from the short film, and you touched on it briefly, which was interesting, was that he grew up in Germany, goes back home,
Mm-hmm.
finds out what Germany is doing in his country, and
Mm-hmm.
he pleads with someone he grew up with, who's now the king of Germany, or the Kaiser. I don't know. I guess you call him Kaiser at that time.
Yeah.
And and he ends up having to. It doesn't end well for him. But
Yeah.
it starts a revolution. And I think and there's so many different elements that I thought was so interesting, and you were able to squeeze it all into 20 minutes, 21
Yeah.
minutes. How long was it?
Yeah. 20 minutes and 23 seconds or something. Yeah.
20 minutes and 23 seconds.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to see the full story, how it all plays out, and all the elements that you've learned since then, and all the things that you
Yeah.
just talked about on today's live stream. Um, I did want to ask you, now that we are in the process of pre-production, you are still in the process of raising funds to continue the process, right? Moving into future seasons, ideally, etc.
Yes.
If people want to follow along with this process, and know when to get updates on when they can actually start watching the series, and if they want to support in any way, shape, or form, how can they find the German King?
Yeah, so at this point in time, we're not doing our Reg CF, but if and when we do that, I will let you guys know, which is basically a crowdfund that is open to the public. And so we'll probably do another live stream. You'll be the first to know when that happens. But if you want to support the show in any way, get the word out, get people just talking about it. And if we end up doing another crowdfund in the near future, please go to thegermanking.com. And at the bottom of the page, there's a place that says, get updates, get involved. And just put your email address in there. We'll get back to you. We'll update you on all the amazing things that we're doing with this show, with this production. And yeah, it'll be awesome. But yeah, please get involved. We'd be happy for you guys to get involved.
Absolutely. And then the other thing is, I know that you're doing a lot of behind the scenes. And when you go to Cameroon, when you're in South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
I know you're filming, so that people can understand what the behind the scenes process looks like, and just like,
Yeah.
just kind of follow along with what's happening. So beyond putting your email in and getting email updates, you can also follow on social media. And what are the pages that they can follow?
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's probably our best, at German King Series. So Instagram.com/ at German King Series. That's our handle. And also Facebook at German King Series. And also Twitter at German King Series. So yeah, you can see all our updates. In fact, I felt like you, Joe. So we had this thing. I was like, this is what my cousin does. So I went to, and guys, actually, please go to German King Series and check out the most recent story. So on August 8th, of course, was the spoiler. Rudolf Manga Bell did get he got assassinated. He was executed for treason. But they commemorate his and the anniversary of his death every year, August 8th, and there's a whole week celebration leading up to it. And so they invited me, the royal family invited me to be part of the Adetokumboh festival, which is so aptly named because it basically means King of Kings or Father of a Nation. And so, which I'm like, what? How awesome is that? But basically, it's a celebration of his life, his legacy, and the ultimate sacrifice that he made for his people. And so, what we ended up doing was we got to go to the exact spot where he was executed. We got to see all these cultural, dances and prayers and just a complete, like, it gave me just so much of a greater insight into Douala Sawa culture. They had me dressed in something called sanja, which is their traditional attire. I mean, it was spectacular. And so it gave me a greater respect for their culture. And then what you guys are going to go see, what you're going to see next on the page is when I visited the island where Rudolf Manga Bell was held prisoner for about a week. It's called Manoka Island. And it's, first of all, it's a stunningly beautiful island, but it's so heartbreaking that in this one place, this is where Rudolf Manga Bell was held prisoner for a week without food, without water by German authorities, while they deliberated on what they're going to do to his, with him and his life and his family. And so to literally walk in his footsteps and see all the things that he saw and sort of just start asking yourself, what are the things that he was imagining those final days of his life, looking at his beautiful kingdom and knowing that these were his last days. It's mind blowing. And so we have all this BTS stuff that is going to be on our German King series page. And man, unfortunately, I wish I could put all of this in the series. We have to pick and choose what we're going to show, but you guys can see it on our social media pages.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I think obviously it's entertainment, but it's also education at the same time.
Yes.
I love when I can understand more about our history and who we are through film. And
yes.
as you mentioned, the stories need to be told. You talked about, you briefly talked about it here, but you and I had many conversations about your frustrations with the roles that you had to play in Hollywood, just around almost always telling a negative story about Africa. And as you said, there aren't very many heroic stories. I mean, there've been a few as of recent. So that shows that you're on track and you're doing something that it looks like people obviously want to see. So I'm excited to see this come to fruition. And so, with that, I know that it's late there right now and you have some things you have to get up for tomorrow morning. Are there any final words you want to leave the audience with about the German King or about your experience moving back to the continent and pursuing your career on the continent versus continuing to just be solely in the United States?
Yeah, a few things. I was so surprised when I came back how incredibly gifted these filmmakers are. And not just filmmakers, but people who are in the audiovisual space, animators, everything that you need is on the continent. And so that was really a huge surprise because I think having lived in the United States for 20 plus years, I would think, come on, they don't have any of these things, surely not. And they do. So I was blown away by the fact that there is a thriving film and entertainment scene here. And one of the things that they asked me when I came back, they were like, okay, this series is amazing, but is it going to be one of those things where you only bring foreign talent? And I was like, no, I want to educate you guys as well. So we actually have partnered up with a school called Young Stars International. And it's basically a lot of young disadvantaged kids who get to come on our sets and we get to do workshops and we get to teach them to be amazing filmmakers and hopefully the next generation of filmmakers. And so I remember I was like, I wanted to give one of them money. And they were like, we don't want money, we just want opportunity. And I was like, well, I mean, isn't that the case for so many of us? And so we're trying to provide that opportunity for them and for so many people around the world. So we actually encourage, if you guys want to also get involved in the series, drop us a line and we'll figure out a place to put you, whether, it's a writer or a set designer, costume design. We really want this to be a collaborative process. So yeah, come on down to Africa. It's awesome. it's my final thoughts.
I haven't been to Nairobi yet. It's on the list. You've been telling me for a while I need to get there. So I wanted to try to see if I can do it this December. We'll see if that's still happening. If not, it is going to happen in the very near future. I got
Awesome.
get there. And I also need to go to Cameroon as well. That is also on
You'll
the
love
list.
it.
So you guys hold me to it. You always do in the comments. You guys always bug me about places that I say I was going to go, and you know, it takes me a while to get there. But I do definitely need to go to these two places. So with that, I just really wanted to have this conversation with you. We are definitely going to have another conversation again when it's closer to the premiere, and you know, we'll have more updates for you all then. We also will be having another discussion more in depth about Sierra Leone and some more of your story on that side, on the topic of supporting Sierra Leonean businesses when I do the live stream with you know, Sierra Leoneans killing it. So you guys see us again in a different discussion on that platform. But until then, I want to thank you guys all for watching. Ade, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited for you. This is like really exciting time. So I'm excited to see this all come to fruition. But with that, guys, thanks for watching. We will see you guys all on the next live stream.
Bye, everyone.